Arctic Advantage. Finland sits at the top of Europe, 1 foot planted firmly in the Arctic. For most countries, that kind of geography would be a curse. But for Finland, it's a gold mine, literally worth trillions. Beneath the frozen soil of Lapland lies what the US Geological Survey estimates to be around $1 trillion in rare earth minerals. The Saukli carbonatite complex in northeastern Finland holds some of the world's richest concentrations, up to 10% in individual samples. Neodymium, praseodymium, dysprosium, the quiet metals that power wind turbines, electric vehicles, and advanced defense systems. Here's why that matters. China controls about 60% of global rare earth production, Europe almost none. As the planet scrambles toward green technology, that imbalance becomes a chokehold. Without rare earths, batteries can't scale, EVs can't roll, and high-tech militaries can't function. Finland isn't just sitting on the resources, it has the means to use them. The Saukli project alone could generate over 700 million euros annually and create up to 1,500 permanent jobs. But the real payoff is what happens next. Processing plants rise, supply chains take root, and expertise clusters. A small Nordic country quietly becomes Europe's mineral security blanket, and the Arctic itself is shifting the odds in Finland's favor. As ice melts, the once impossible Northeast Passage is opening up. Shipping routes that used to take weeks through the Suez now take days through Arctic waters. Finland's ports suddenly matter. Its position between NATO, Russia, and China turns from peripheral to pivotal. This is already playing out. The US just inked a $6 billion deal with Finland for new icebreakers, built on a century of Finnish mastery in Arctic engineering. But without a credible system, the Arctic Advantage is worthless. Credible system. 86% of Finns trust what their government says, even in a crisis. In most democracies, that number barely hits 45. The difference isn't just policy, it's credibility that doesn't collapse under pressure. When COVID hit, Finland faced the same global chaos: broken supply chains, strained hospitals, rising deaths. But something unusual happened. People trusted the system. They followed guidance without panic. Vaccination rates for children under 2 reached 99%, among the world's highest. Schools stayed open longer because people believed in the institutions running their lives. That level of trust wasn't built overnight. Finland's healthcare system ranks 3rd in the world for quality while spending less than its Nordic neighbors. Life expectancy sits at 82.5 years. Infant mortality is just 1.8 per thousand births. Those numbers come from systems that quietly deliver year after year. It's a decentralized model. Each municipality runs its own healthcare, but somehow that decentralization breeds accountability. Doctors train to master's level. Standards are enforced. Performance is tracked. When something breaks, someone actually fixes it. Contrast that with systems elsewhere, where care is supposedly universal, but no one trusts it enough to use. People turn to private clinics because the public option feels unreliable. That distrust drains both money and lives. Finland flips the logic. It proves that boring systems, ones that just work, create more wealth than flashy systems that collapse under their own hype. When citizens can count on healthcare, they take smarter risks. Plan for the future. It's how a nation quietly builds capital. And that isn't complete without machines. Boring machines. In 2024, a company most people outside the country barely recognize, Cone, moved 2 billion people. Up elevators, across airports, through skyscrapers and subways. 2 billion individual journeys powered by one company that pulled in 11 billion euros in revenue. You probably never thought about it, that's the point. While Silicon Valley was chasing unicorns and disruption myths, Finland was busy building things that quietly move humanity every single day. Cone operates in 70 countries, employs 60,000 people, and runs on a profit margin that would make most tech CEOs sweat. The same pattern shows up everywhere. Neste, once a conventional oil refiner, reinvented itself as the world's top producer of renewable diesel and sustainable aviation fuel, racking up over 20 billion euros in annual revenue. It's the only oil company to land on Corporate Knights' global 100 most sustainable corporations list for 17 straight years. And then there's Finland's hidden empire, the icebreakers. About 80% of the worlds are designed in Finland. 60% are built there. That's how they made the $6 billion deal with US. Wärtsilä dominates global marine engines. Stora Enso commands an $11 billion forest industry empire. Metso Outotec, worth nearly $9 billion, builds the machines that build other machines. None of them disrupted the world. They just perfected what already worked with ingenious engineering and reliability. Finland's economy runs on these boring giants. Machinery, vehicles, and metal products make up over 21% of GDP. Forest products, 13%, chemicals, 11%. They don't headline documentaries, but they employ tens of thousands and export precision to nearly every developed country on Earth. That's the real lesson: being reliable, consistently. When a cone elevator fails in Mumbai, it's fixed. When Neste's fuel powers a transatlantic flight, passengers arrive. When a Finnish-built ship cuts through Arctic ice, global trade flows. These are dependencies, and reliable dependencies make money for decades. That's Finland's genius, keeping the world running. Green profit. This is where Finland stops being boring and starts being brilliant. 38% of the country's total energy use now comes from bioenergy. Not because Finland's on some moral crusade to save the planet, but because it just makes sense. When you're surrounded by forests, burning biomass becomes logical, and it happens to be wildly profitable. The bioeconomy adds nearly $30 billion a year, about 12% of the entire national economy. The forest sector alone brings in over $9 billion. In Finland, renewable energy feels like a business model. If you depend on imported oil, your energy costs swing with global prices. If OPEC sneezes, your economy catches a cold. But if your energy comes from your own trees, refined with your own tech on your own land, you're immune. That energy independence is the financial insulation worth billions. The environmental benefit is just a bonus, and the real motive is money. Finland can now export surplus renewable power when prices spike, shrug off oil shocks that paralyze others, and give its companies stable energy costs. Meanwhile, its reputation as a climate leader keeps attracting ESG investors with hundreds of billions to spend. That's what separates Finland from countries that treat sustainability like theater. Finland treats it like plumbing, something that has to work every day or everything else breaks. Because when green energy is built on self-interest, it actually lasts. But energy only matters if you know how to use it wisely. And that's where Finland's weirdest secret to wealth comes in: cultural minimalism. Finland doesn't talk about being rich. Rich people buy things. Finns just don't. In 2024, despite increased household disposable income, private consumption actually declined. Why? Household savings increased significantly. It's cultural. Sisu, the Finnish concept of quiet determination mixed with stoicism, has a side effect. When your neighbor doesn't flex, you don't feel compelled to compete. So capital that would have been spent on luxury watches and status cars stays invested instead. Savings rates in Finland have historically hovered around 8%. That's among the world's highest. That money gets reinvested, which creates productive capacity, creating jobs and export revenue, and generating even more capital to reinvest. The math is simple. The discipline to maintain it is rare. Household debt sits at 74.9% of GDP. Compare that to consumption-driven economies where household debt balloons as people finance status symbols they don't need. That difference compounds. Over decades, it compounds into entire economic systems. The philosophy is almost austere. Buy quality that lasts. Don't buy status. A Finnish person will spend money on a winter coat that functions perfectly for 20 years. They won't spend it on a designer label. They'll buy an apartment to live in, not as an investment flipping property. Any Finns watching? Feel free to back me up on this. Talking about designer labels, which weirdly turned into a global brand worth billions. Timeless design. It sounds poetic, but it's really financial. Back in 1935, Alvar Aalto designed a simple wooden chair. Nearly a century later, that same chair still sells for thousands. Marimekko's bold 1960s patterns remain global fashion staples. Iittala glassware from the mid-1900s is now traded like art. Now that's recurring revenue disguised as design. When something never looks outdated, you never need to replace it. A chair bought in 1970 still fits in a 2025 apartment. A coffee table from 1985 looks freshly made. Finland's philosophy, form as function, never fashion, produces objects that age slower than trends can change. For consumers, that's smart spending. For manufacturers, It's genius economics. Cone ranks among the world's most sustainable corporations. Nestle has held its spot for 17 straight years. Kesko, a retail giant, has stayed in the Global 100 since 2005. The through line? Durability over novelty. That mindset builds a brand moat you can't breach. You can't out-innovate minimalism. You can't make timeless design look dated. It just endures, quietly commanding premium prices and generational loyalty. Finnish companies understood something retail still hasn't. If you make something well enough once, you don't need to keep remaking it. It sounds obvious, but most global industries run on built-in failure. Finland ran the other way. And it's not just in furniture. That same ethos runs through Finnish engineering. Wärtsilä doesn't win by redesigning every year. It wins by perfecting evolving products. That stability turns reliability into a compounding business model. But Finland didn't stumble into this wisdom. It was forged through collapse. Recession Advantage, year 2000. That was Nokia's peak. The company wasn't just a brand, but it was Finland's pride and economic engine, making up nearly 4% of the entire GDP. It was the story that put Finland on the global map, and then it collapsed. By 2010, Nokia was in freefall. By 2014, it was effectively gone. Losing 4% of your national economy should have triggered panic. Jobs vanished. Revenue streams dried up. The narrative should have ended in disaster. But Finland chose to adapt. When Nokia fell, it released thousands of world-class engineers into the wild. People who knew how to build hardware and manage production at scale. They built new things, startups, labs, companies that learned from the wreckage instead of running from it. The failure of Nokia did something rare. It normalized failure itself. Between 2000 and 2003, Finland's early-stage venture capital investments hit 8.5% of GDP, double the EU average, and almost on par with the US. Today, Finland hosts around 4,000 startups and 11 unicorns. That's modest next to Silicon Valley's numbers. But there's a twist. Finnish startups actually survive. This is Finland's quiet rebellion against the American startup gospel. The US worships growth. Finland worships survival. A company that endures 20 years beats one that burns bright and dies in 5. Profit in year 3 beats hype in year 5. Nokia's collapse wasn't the end. It was a national apprenticeship. It taught Finland how to turn failure into infrastructure and pain into process. While most countries doubled down on what broke them, Finland did the opposite. It asked the only question that matters: what actually works? Returning talent. Here's a pattern most wealthy countries can't seem to fix. They educate their brightest minds and then lose them. Finland does something different. Every year, thousands of Finns head abroad to study in the US or Western Europe. They pick up world-class skills from top universities, and then they come back. It might sound ordinary, but most countries that export talent never see it again. Their graduates settle in Silicon Valley, London, or Berlin, and the knowledge leaks out forever. Finland reverse-engineered the problem. Today, it has the 4th strongest knowledge economy in Europe, just behind Sweden, Denmark, and the UK, and it ranks first in the World Economic Forum's Global Information Technology Index. Picture it: a Finnish engineer studies at MIT, works 5 years at an American tech firm, then returns home to apply everything she's learned to a Finnish company, solving real problems on a global scale. That expertise compounds into something extraordinary. Why do they come back? Because Finland never stopped being worth returning to. The systems work. Corruption is almost non-existent. Taxes are fair. Salaries are competitive. It's a society where competence feels rewarded and trust still exists. Women make up nearly 58% of tertiary graduates, and employment rates between men and women are nearly identical, around 76%. That means half the country's intelligence isn't being wasted or sidelined. And because institutions are trusted, 86% of citizens even believed political leaders during crises, problems get solved faster. Knowledge workers stay motivated because the system feels functional, not feudal. This education, return, reinvestment cycle creates a compounding edge that money can't buy. You need 3 things: talent that returns, institutions that work, and a country people actually want to live in. Most nations manage 1 or 2. Finland manages all 3, and that loop of returning brainpower sustained for generations, builds something no natural resource ever could. A knowledge economy that keeps getting smarter. Finland got rich by keeping the boring things that actually work. While everyone chased disruption, Finland just kept the machine running. And apparently, that's worth everything. Let's keep exploring the next story.